All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure that's actually the case over on Rumble, where I see that almost 200 people are waiting for the live stream. So, I'm assuming that it'll probably work out just fine. You never know, though. Sometimes you have a glitch. Earlier with my Rumble uploads, actually, a couple of videos took a long time to process. I think one of them might still be processing now. Just a second, let me check that, because that was of concern. I think the rest of them have processed fine. Yeah, the Don't Eat the Bill Gates Fries video, I don't know if that's actually available to people yet. It's over on BitChute, and for obvious reasons, I couldn't upload that one to YouTube. So we talked about a dingo eating your baby and other fun things this morning. Then I had a French lunch. I will tell you this. I expected that the French MRE would be good, but I figured people were exaggerating when they said, like, it's so much better than like a US MRE. Because US MREs aren't bad. There's some components that I like more than others. That Mexican chicken stew, that would be on the low end, for example. Most of the components are pretty good, though. Other than the coffee being repeatedly oxidized in the modern ones. I don't know what they're doing with them at this point. The French MRE, I will vouch for. I officially endorse the concept that the normie sort of opinion by most people that the French MRE, the RCIR, is better, is much superior quality, is indeed true. The only thing they need to do is get flameless ration heaters, and it would basically be perfect at this point. Anyway, we get a lot to talk about. Mainly war, unfortunately, and Venezuelan migrants and a few other things. Of course, Milei coming in a relatively close but pacing behind second place in the second round in Argentina the other day. We'll talk about the ramifications for that, because the third place finisher does seem to lean more towards Milei's kind of populism. We're going to have to wait and see, though, what happens. I have a feeling there may have been shenanigans in the Argentina election. Tony Nagy, Tarl, your plant needs a bigger pot, bro. I'm assuming that you mean this one. Yeah, it is a little bit pot bound. Now is not necessarily the best time of year to transplant, but I have my ways. What I really want to do is mix up some terra preta and make my own homemade soil, as opposed to using potting soil. It's far superior. You can use it for years in a row without repotting the plant. Even if it's root bound, it's still getting good nutrients. I've done this with bromeliads before. The bonus holes. Help! We are trying to get to 669 fall. Oh, errors on X before Halloween. If we reach that goal, we'll be releasing a track from our upcoming EP. I think you mean followers. And you can actually use, I think you can use that term. If YouTube has blocked you from saying followers on a super chat, then that's pretty warped. It wouldn't surprise me in the least. Anyway, we'll be talking about various things. What did we have on the docket? Oh, yeah, gays for Palestine. We'll be talking about that particular cringe. Alex Stein was getting into it again, mocking certain groups of leftoids for being pro-Hamas. Not really pro-Palestine. Some of these groups are explicitly pro-Hamas. We'll be talking about the differentiation, the subtle one between those two. And it's like, okay, you're neurodivergent and bisexual, and you're supporting Hamas. I don't think that things would go over very well if you were a Palestinian, but that's just my educated opinion based on seeing people thrown off of rooftops. Also, we've got warnings. This comes from The Guardian. This is UK journalism. The Europeans beginning to get worried that the United States is going to haul off and launch into another war. I spoke this morning about how if Blinken's and Biden's comments the other day really are an indicator, I have a feeling that they want to drag the United States into a war in Israel and Palestine. Probably not directly, like, U.S. forces, maybe not in the Gaza Strip, but certainly Syria, operating maybe in Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq. You did have a base attack the other day on an airfield in Iraq by the so-called liberation forces there. They're guarding various things, including, of course, the oil. And there was a drone attack, and it appears to have been successful. Joe Biden was actually on air live at the time. It's like, well, come on, man, I got to get back to the Situation Room because there's a problem here. Yeah, like, your presence is really needed. You're not the one calling the shots, but we'll be talking about that anyway. By the way, to not sure, terra preta, literally just take hardwood lump charcoal, untreated, Grind it up. Don't use any metal instruments because charcoal powder is explosive. So be very careful about that. It's highly flammable. Pound it up with some wood in a plastic bucket. Mix it into your soil until it has a nice black granular sort of disposition. It looks a little bit like coffee grounds, actually, only shinier, if that makes sense. Impregnate it with compost tea, or you can use kelp meal or anything else that has a decent amount of nitrogen. Use an organic. Soak it, and then drain it, and you're ready to go, basically. I also do hugelkultur. I've done lasagna gardening. It depends on the crop whether that's actually worth it, but it's a novel idea. It's sort of kind of similar to no-till gardening, if that makes any sense. I should probably make more in-depth videos about that. Right now, of course, I'm in the Netherlands. I don't have the room to sort of show you hugelkultur and stuff out back. But if we get a bigger place here, bigger yard, certainly in Rutland, I'd be able to do that. I do have one kind of quasi-hugelkultured bed. I know we're not really talking about the news right now. I'm just trying to address people's concerns. I'm a pleaser, as you see. And we'll talk about Milei, the Argentina runoff election, and now you have the final round, so there'll only be 2 people in that. Massa, who's got the most fucking ironic name ever, Massa leading Milei with, what was it? Massa had 36% of the vote roughly, and Milei had about 30%. And then Bullrich, who loosely aligns with Milei's ideology more broadly, got about 24%. Again, though, if you control the ballot printers, we've seen what can happen. If you're in Argentina, I would definitely not just vote for Milei in the final round. I would be knocking on doors. I would be telling skeptical people, fucking get out and cast your fucking ballot. Because you got one chance at this. You can tear the bandage off and reverse decades of socialism, or you can continue down the same path that you're on with over 100% inflation. That's basically the long and short of it. Lev Polyakov. Good morning, Sticks. What's the origin of your smiling rooster teeth man meme? It's just something that I saw on 4chan and I thought it was funny. It expresses superlative laughter, I suppose. The great Scalzini, it's infuriating sometimes to defend dumb leftoid takes such as gays for Gaza for free speech, knowing full well they would happily take away my speech. That's called principle, and I can empathize with you. It's difficult to have to perpetually defend people who would never defend you. Look at Hassan Piker. That was last year, or even the year before at this point. He got temp banned on YouTube. Who is like the only right-wing commentator, again, supposedly right-wing, that's how I've been cast by people who don't like me generally, who is the only non-left commentator who defended the fuck. It was me. He's not going to defend me. If I disappeared off the face of the earth, somebody like Hassan Piker would be happy about the fact that I was no longer capable of speaking my mind. But you've got to have principles. As a liberty lover, I'm going to defend the free speech, even of people that I find completely objectionable and retarded. I made a video the other day about letting the students speak. Most of those students are pro, Gaza liberation and stuff, and some of them are literally pro-Hamas. That doesn't mean that they're shooting anyone. They're not burning synagogues. They're not drawing swastikas in the Jewish cemetery. They're not doing anything illegal. They should be allowed to speak, and they shouldn't be blackballed for doing so. And they're just kids. Some of these people, some of them are morons. I don't think that they should have to pay for the rest of their life because they're 19 years old and they have a shitty opinion. Maxwell JW, is it true that Trump actually told people not to vote in the election the other day, or are the simps telling a half-truth again? It's not even a half-truth. This is in the context of being sarcastic. This happens commonly. We've seen the DeSantis fans multiple times take sound clips out of context. They do this at this point as much as the goddamn liberal legacy media does with regards to Trump. Their derangement really is that bad. It's rather sad. By the way, I've still got some of that mint tea from the French RCIR. It's very minty, and you're supposed to leave the tea bag in the whole time. Some people dip it in a couple times and they take it out. Liz does this. And I don't understand it. It's like, okay, you're drinking water that mint briefly wandered through. It's sort of like chicken soup from the Campbell's can. I like my tea as strong as I can get it. When I drink chamomile, I put 4 fucking tea bags into it at the same time. And I squish them out with a fork for 10 minutes. until the tea is basically black. And then actually, sometimes I can get a few extra hours of sleep. Insomnia really sucks, let me tell you. This is going to become the rant stream here if I'm not careful. So let me quickly check just a sec. Awesome Diesel over on Rumble. Should I be concerned about arguing with climate science believers on LinkedIn? I've never used LinkedIn, so I have no clue. Can you get banned for denying that humankind is going to turn the world into Tatooine if we don't pay more taxes? I don't know. I'm not 100% sure about that. Also, for some reason, I just triggered my live stream over there. I don't need two streams going on at the same time. I can see myself on the left side of my screen. Who would want to see two of me? Holy shit. Anyway, the first thing I've got to get into, and I mean, it's humorous in like a grave humor sort of way. It's not humorous in the objective sense, like, ha 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 ha, superlatively funny, like the rooster meme Lev was talking about. It's more funny because there are actually people that fucking are taken in by this. There is actually a group called Queers for Palestine. It actually exists. Individuals who are divergent, we'll use their terminology, with regards to their sexual proclivities. So, maybe they like docking, maybe they like scissoring, maybe, that they like something, maybe they like both, or they have 3 dicks or something like that, and they're supporting Palestine. You got to understand my nuance here, and I'll tell everyone that's not aware. I'm not Team Israel or Team Palestine. I have no stick up my ass about the Palestinian people. I feel sorry for them because right now their civilization, if it passes for one, is being completely annihilated. The same is true with Israel. I don't have any problem with the idea of a Jewish state. I just don't care. I oppose Israeli imperialism in the West Bank, and I certainly oppose what's going on currently in Gaza, because at this point, it's like you're not going to actually defeat Hamas. It's more retaliatory than anything else. But I don't have a problem with Israel or its existence. I don't care what government incarnation they have. They can do whatever they want. So that's the caveat. I would say that up front first. That being said, it is the honest truth that if you are in Palestine, Hamas is the government. Hamas, they are the legitimate governing body over Palestine. They have the power. They have the guns. And therefore, they can do whatever the fucking hell they want. If you are in Palestine and you do gay stuff, so if you're advertising on, the Palestinian Craigslist, hey, I suck a mean cock or something like that, you will go to jail. That's if you're lucky. The official punishment is 10 years in prison for being a homosexual. The unofficial punishment is we beat the living crap out of you and left you for dead in the goddamn dumpster, or we tossed you off a building and made sure that your neck snapped. You would be much better off if you are gay or lesbian or something like that. If you wanted to back a horse in this race, you should be backing Israel, where it's actually legal to do those things. I find it very, very strange that there are people who fall on the magender spectrum, or their proclivities are anything other than straight, fully straight, and yet they're backing Palestine. The Palestinians elected Hamas. It would be sort of like you backing the government of Alabama. There's fundamentally no difference other than, the race involved, and the fact that those people, of course, largely are socialistic. And that's really why this is happening. The overlap between the LGBTQ, MAP plus 123 ABC thing and far leftism in the socioeconomic sense ensures that they're backing a state that effectively is morally more similar to the Deep South. In fact, much beyond that. You're not going to get killed in Alabama for being gay. Might get discriminated against. You certainly have people chuckling behind your back. If you're in small town Bama or something like that, you're probably not going to get killed. The odds of you getting tire necklaced or tossed off a bridge are pretty low. But if you're in Palestine and you're being open about your proclivities, you'll die. Again, I don't know which one is worse. You get tossed off a building, okay, well, you didn't get tortured or beaten or anything. You die fairly quick. Or you end up in a Hamas prison. I don't know. I think, maybe the quick death is the better option, actually, in that case. I find it weird And therefore, that there are people that are engaged in that sort of like the gender identity and the sexual, like the creed id poll, and you're backing Palestine. You can think that Palestine deserves, to exist unperturbed, unmolested, and so, etc. And Hamas doesn't help this, by the way. But you do need to understand that Hamas is literally their government. They elected Hamas. I'm not saying the election was fair, by the way. That's the other thing. Some people, like when Herzog, the Israeli president, came out and said, well, Palestinians share a joint blame for what's going on right now because they elected them. Well, that's assuming that the election was fair. Now, we've seen first world nations recently without fair elections as well. It's not beyond the realm of the pale to say you had the right to vote for the non-Hamas candidate, but there was a Hamas member with an assault rifle pointed at a real one, by the way, pointed at your head, an AK-47 pointed at your head when you inked the ballot that was non-secret. Well, I can understand why Hamas got elected. Anyway, I oppose all of what's going on. I've always opposed war. I was not in favor of the invasion of Iraq. I was not in favor of the invasion of Afghanistan. My opinions years later are usually the orthodox mainstream opinion. So people look back in hindsight and say, the anti-war crowd was right. Every single time, though, that there's a new war, they say, no, this time it's different, and here's why. And there's always the same basic list of differences as to why this time is at variance with all of the other stupid wars we've entered into. We'll be talking about this in a moment. But if you are backing Palestine, and if you are gay, you are fundamentally, again, making the same mistake that you'd be making if you supported the government of fucking Alabama or Mississippi. It's basically the same, except it's on steroids. Because and I noticed that they never actually go over there. They're not going over to Gaza to protest. The Israeli bombs would be the least of their worries. They would get hanged. They would get burned to death. They would get killed. That's just the long and short of it. So it's, Ivan S. Yep, it's getting old. Absolutely. It got old a long time ago. I mean, it was one thing when the leftoids weren't involved with this level of id poll, and it was mainly economic. So it's like basically, they're our fellow commies, which Hamas is effectively communists as well. That made more sense. But when you delve into the anti-moralist position with regards to creed, gender, and things like that, and then you're supporting Gaza and independence, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Again, there is a huge amount of abuse hurled at people like that in that section of the world. When is Greta Thunberg going to go over there and teach them about how their religion supports feminism or something like that? We got to get all of the third waivers and the id pollists from the far left and force them to go over there and to practice what they preach. Most of them won't come back. I mean, I'm not sure that's a bad thing for the country, actually. Yeah, try being gay in Palestine and see how long that works. You'll be lucky if they just mutilate you. Alan Smithy, where's my no notifications squad at? Yeah, I never get notifications for anything at this point. AP1S2K, just lost my best friend of 28 years. I don't know how to cope. I can't take it. He took his life last Saturday. Hug your loved ones, reach out. My condolences, my dude. So yeah, best friend of 20 years, that's definitely some heavy shit. You will be able to take it though. Think about it this way. And it may sound fucking corny or cliche, but just keep it in mind. Would your best friend of nearly 30 years want you to become crippled emotionally and not be able to go on and make a positive change in the world? Well, this is a good person, and if he's your friend, I recognize you. I can vouch for you being a good clanker. Then that means would want you to be a good person and just go on and continue the good fight. So, that would be my recommendation. My condolences, though. Losing anyone that you've been in proximity to for any length of time is hard. Family members, friends, hell, pets, things like that. Life comes at you hard. Also, I don't know if you believe in a better place or anything sort of like that. I kind of do because I'm spiritual. Then, I mean, your friend's not suffering. So that's good shit. It's good news. The Agal faces 3 truths that liberals hate. two genders, Second Amendment is absolute, and Christmas starts at November 1st. That third part I will completely vary with you on. If you are triggered by one of them, you are a libtard. Well, then sign me up for being a proud libtard. Christmas starts at the end of November. You've got to have Thanksgiving first. I mean, if you're not in the United States, I guess that doesn't apply. But for the United States, please, eat your turkey before you put up your fucking Christmas lights. You just do that one. People are putting up the Christmas lights. It's not even Halloween. November 1st, okay, at least it's more acceptable than starting it in the middle of October. But no, I don't agree with you on that. However, yes, I agree with you on gender and guns. Second Amendment is more than absolute, though. It's an enjoyable thing. The proposition of owning and firing weapons is fun. Weapons aren't just good, they're double plus good. Having guns is awesome. Try explaining that to someone in this country. Pilgrim Media, with the IDF, Oppenheimer, Lebanon, or Syria? Under the semi-canonical doctrine and Pentagon papers from the 1980s, yeah, they actually would. If they were pressed to do so, they would nuke their enemies and possibly themselves. So we're hoping that doesn't happen. Again, I don't want anyone to suffer. Most of the people on all sides in every conflict are inevitably going to be innocent civilians. You can make up whatever opinions you want or excuses as to why it's okay to starve them or kill them or bomb them or something like that. But no, they're innocent civilians, and a lot of them are kids. There's a lot of dead Jewish kids and a lot of dead Palestinian kids right now, and I don't see how anyone can possibly support that. Especially, I mean, once you're a parent, maybe it hits different because I've got a daughter. Okay, well, fucking imagine that. Not interested. Just leave each other alone. Go and do something positive, like, I don't know, farm olives or whatever the fuck the economy of Palestine is. Grow pomegranates or something. Felon leftist, why won't Arab nations take Palestinians? Well, it would be kind of difficult. I like how some people are like, well, there's plenty of room in the Sinai for 2 million people. Yeah, but it's a sterile desert. There's nothing there. It's quite literally just dunes. You might as well relocate them to the middle of the Sahara and like northern Chad or something like that. They would probably survive just as easily. You'll be constantly propping them up with food and water because you won't have any choice unless you want them to starve or die of dehydration. Not exactly the greatest place in the world to have to inhabit unless you're literally right on the coast, because at least then there's fish and shit like that. You pop in a desalination plant. Next news story, and I worry about this too. And this is, even less humorous. I mean, we're talking about people getting thrown off buildings because they choose to rub cocks together or something. Again, something that I'm just not going to support. The Deus Vulturs, you can go ahead and think that that's funny or something. No, I don't agree with you. I'm not moralistic. This is something that's genuinely worrisome, though. Here's the title. It's an opinion piece about the Israel-Hamas war, which really is the Israel-Palestine war. At this point, that's become the reality. Is the U.S. about to blindly march into yet another catastrophic war? By Mustafa Bayoumi. Unfortunately, I think there's a measurable chance that actually is what is going to happen. And that's a real big problem. Do you think that I don't agree with Janet Yellen that we can afford another war. And that's just talking about the money and the goods involved. I don't think it would be good for anyone. It's not good for the U.S. public. It's not good for the interested parties involved with the war. It's not good for third parties with diplomatic interest in the region. The only thing that the U.S. presence in this region at this point can do is inflame things further and make them worse. Naturally, I oppose getting involved. My problem, and it ties into this article and the video that I made this morning, is that if you look at the messaging from the Biden admin itself, it looks like they're gearing up towards war. It looks like they're effectively attempting to put troops and armor and so forth in harm's way so that there can be a Pearl Harbor style attack at some point. Maybe it's an anti-ship missile fired by the FSA, but of course blamed on Assad. Maybe it's a mustard gas attack. Maybe it's a random bombing. Maybe it's a Hamas rocket strike on a conveniently located group of U.S. troops that they totally didn't know were in that building at the time, and they totally thought it was the IDF. Regardless, it looks like they're trying to set up to have an excuse to go to war. Politically speaking, Wartime presidents tend to be reelected. And Biden right now, his electability is in the shitter. So there's a reason that he would want to start a war. The deep state had several years where they weren't allowed to start a war, although they definitely did try. Peace was breaking out. Trump attempted to draw down in Syria. They had to literally get the envoy to lie to him about troop totals. He penned the Afghanistan deal that later, the second the Uniparty was in charge, what they do, they queered the pitch by pushing the deal back, ensuring that all the Pashtun culture people over there would join with the Taliban, swelling their ranks. North Korea, there was rapprochement there. Border posts gone. Propaganda broadcasts gone. Human remains repatriated. There was more cooperation across the border to remove landmines. Trump, first president to step foot in North Korea. I mean, I could go fucking on and on. I could make a video just about his prowess in the foreign diplomacy sense. The second the Uniparty got back in charge, they started going full Milei. You know, Milei, the one that hates Trump and says that Trump is a madman, even though Milei apparently gave Trump a paper saying, hey, we should attack the Iranians. Let's start World War III. And when Trump turned him down, all of a sudden he soured on Orange Man, which was kind of interesting. I am very worried that the U.S. is about to enter into a regional war. Bigger than Iraq, bigger than Afghanistan, something worse than both. The problem is that with the current feckless and warmongering, war pig administration, if they manage to enter such a theater of combat, even if Trump is reelected, and my hope is that that would still happen. Again, the wartime president effect may not actually have an effect at all because Trump also has that technical incumbency. He had been a president for a term before anyway. Even if it doesn't work, though, is he going to be able to immediately end combat missions, bring the troops home and say, no, enough is enough. We're not doing this shit anymore. I don't think that he'd be able to do so. And that becomes the grave concern. The grave concern is that the Biden administration either gets its way or it burns down the barn after having closed the door behind it. On its way out at the 11th hour, it just lays waste to things and fucks them up for a generation just out of spite. I'm worried that that is going to happen. And if that happens, by the way, let's say you have a Trump administration. He'll do his best to try to, plug the leaks in the ship, but there's going to be an awful lot of leaks. He's not going to be able to plug them all. And people do that fickle bullshit that they did before. Like they expected it to be a God emperor. So now it's literally the Flying Dutchman. The ship no longer even has to sail. It can just sort of breeze along, in the vapor or something. And when that didn't happen, even though he was doing the best that he could, and he did a good job, and he had a lot of successes, TDS, stem to stern, a bunch of DeSantis fans at this point, and also a bunch of liberals that won't give him any sort of credit for what he did. I'm still hopeful. I think that we can possibly forestall this, and I hope they fail. And there's a possibility of that. The Biden administration has been very, very dumb. If their intent is to start a war, they might actually fail to do so. The troops weren't in the right building. The Hamas rockets hit a block away, and so you're not allowed to go to war or something like that. The fact that the Biden administration is so dumb might actually save us from World War III. It might start World War III, but there's always the other possibility as well. I'm thinking of a situation where 50 years, declassed documents show us, hey, by the way, we basically were at 2 milliseconds from midnight, but Joe Biden's administration was so goddamn stupid they couldn't even get the troops into the right general area to get hit by the Hamas rockets. I wish that I was being hyperbolic when I said there's a measurable chance of something like that happening. Biden is not a patriot. He hates the country because he's a globalist, doesn't want nation states to exist at all. And if he can make a bunch of money for himself and his shareholders, sort of like with Dick Cheney and his arms dealer friends back during the Iraq War era, then he'll do so. My problem is that they are almost certain to at least try it. My hope is that they fail. My hope is that there's some patriotic undertones within just enough elements of the military and intel community to do what the envoy in Syria did to Donald Trump when they lied to him about the number of troops. Lie to Joe Biden and tell him the troops are in a different building or something like that because he can't trust the bastard. I mean, it would be the patriotic thing to do. If you think that you can stop World War III, then misleading the steward-in-chief and preventing a wider war from breaking out, I would think that'd be patriotic. Some of you have family in the military or in groups like the CIA. Maybe word should be spread, so to speak. Maybe we need a little bit of citizen activism there. You're not being a patriot by starting World War III and ensuring that everyone dies in nuclear fire. Viking Woman 1988, spoon clank for you. Thank you very much. No spoon in the tea, though. Nice and minty. I felt a little bit under the weather today. So has Liz. We're thinking that we might have a cold or something. Not really seeing too many effects from it, but I was a little bit sniffy last night and had more insomnia than usual. So mint is probably a good thing for me. D-Bag 175. Hey, Sticks. Been watching you every day since 2015 when all this nonsense really started ramping up. Just wanted to let you know I really appreciate all of your endeavors. Thank you very much. That's some long-term clanking. Clink, clink. Musings of a Witch's Path. Greetings. I need diaper money for the newest clanker. I have a few works available on Amazon. Search Katrina the Good. I also created a journal that is available. It's a simple design, but I'm happy with how it turned out. So there you go, Katrina the Good. If you want to search that on Amazon, there's a journal available and other things as well. Always good to do some shouting out. James Flowers, 26 minutes late. I was listening to Niango Star and didn't get the alert. Have you played Zomboid yet? Look at it, damn you. Just your flavor of casual survival game. I still haven't gotten a chance to do that. The only gaming that I've done in a long time is a few rounds of Napoleon Total War. I really like the Spanish Lakeside, by the way. I did a 2-on-1 the other day. I was playing against the Prussians. There were two enemy Prussian armies, just generic ones. And I played as, I think I was the British or the French. And I barely, by the skin of my teeth, I managed to defeat in a 2-on-1. I had, I think, 5 or 6 horses left in the general staff and 2 half-beaten groups of lights, and that's all I had left. But then, the enemy infantry by that point had been completely worn down and sort of just fled on its own for some unknown reason. Felon Leftist, did you see the Dave Chappelle Palestine rant? No, but I did hear of it. Wasted Bonehead, good morning from the grave. And Sigil Stone, they want to arrest people for buying guns. I'm of the opinion we should arrest people for not buying guns. And at this point, I'm not joking anymore. Sentence leftoids to purchasing AR-15s. Yeah, if you want a well-regulated militia and you believe in the slightly warped definitions given by the leftoids, that means that the state, by proxy, should have to offer training classes and give people subsidized ammunition and free weapons, actually. Wasted Bonehead. All this talk of World War III is lovely. I can't wait for my ghoul brothers to rise up. They're basically radioactive zombies. King of Biltong. Good morning from Antons in Roanoke, Texas. Get your biltong shipped free using code STICKS on www.landofbiltong.com and www.antonsusa.com. Great for your keto and carnivore diets. Try the official Clank meat. Yes, very delicious stuff. More delicious than the French RCIR, by the way. Although by MRE standards, that was pretty good. I strongly recommend the bison. That and the Japanese Wagyu, but the bison is more like, I really like buffalo. I don't even know why. I had buffalo burgers back as a kid once, and the rest is history. Ian, hypothetical. Trump gets in, immediately crosses the Rubicon. He could call a 10 million man army in a week. Thoughts? And try a neti pot. Clank. I have no clue what that is. That would be a terrible idea. He would quickly find himself in the ground or under like legit arrest or something like that. By the way, he doesn't even want to do that. He wants to be a legit leader of the United States in the presidential capacity. The pipe dream of the leftoids of him trying to become a dictator are fully wrong. Shadows and Dust 2. Trump sprang Sholom Rubashnik from prison 20 years early. He had 300 plus illegals on his farm just the day the fuzzies picked him up for stealing money. 27 blacks killed a day, 0.6 killed by cops a day. Yeah, there was that one was he a rabbinical leader? I think that Trump did pardon fairly early on, and people were wondering why that happened. Probably an investor of his from back in the day or something. I mean, he's not beyond nepotism. I never claimed that Donald Trump was a fully honest business person, just that he's not guilty of felony fraud and shit like that. The jerk. No message, so I'll use this to buy crack for the cats. We only have one cat now. The other one had to be rehomed because she incessantly attacked her sister, woke the baby up at 4 a.m., pissed on all her belongings, and went crazy. Even the neighbors were complaining about the noise. We had no choice. And I am very, very reluctant to give up on a pet that you've been with for any length of time, but it just was too much. Once you begin waking the baby up at 4 a.m. repeatedly, that ain't gonna fly. Felon leftist, do you think Frank Hassel could stop Netanyahu? Very possibly. Next news story, we've got Milei, and this is just a little bit of a warning. I would not be crazily optimistic that Argentina is going to cast aside its socialism based on the second round of voting. Milei came in second place. Now, he came in about 6 points behind Massa, which is still a very funny name. The neo-lib candidate, sort of the socialist light, like an Elizabeth Warren candidate. The good news is that the third place candidate, and if you compact her numbers with Milei's, it's well over 50%, is more on the populistic side. So definitely an outsider. That's the good news. The bad news is that unexpected so-called late surge in polling points towards the ballot printers going brr. And so unless Milei and his allies do a really large amount of footwork, I would expect him to lose. I'm cautiously, I mean, he's capable of winning. I would vote for him if I were Argentinian. He's quite clearly more intelligent. He's quite clearly more focused than the other candidates. He has better ideas. And basically a vote for Milei, Javier Milei, is a vote to rip the bandage off and say, you know, it's going to be painful if we get rid of all of these layers of socialism. But it's also necessary. If we want to ever restabilize, we don't have a choice at this point. It's unsustainable. A vote for Massa is a vote for the status quo, in which you slowly continue to slide more and more into poverty. Your currency continues to hyperinflate, and you've got some fucking problems. I would vote for Milei, definitely. Also, he seems like an interesting character. He basically is kind of like an Argentinian Donald Trump. He reminds me a little bit of like a Bolsonaro or somebody like that, or Meloni, if Meloni didn't immediately do a 180 on the illegals that were in Italy. That would be good. The problem is who actually runs the ballots. Argentina is not known to have fully fair and open elections. They're not bad. By developing world standards, they're pretty good. But if we can have, you know, the Burr thing going on in the United States, and we did in 2020, I would say they're going to try to screw Milei. So what needs to happen is people that are even mildly upset by the current system in Argentina need to come out in absolutely massive numbers. And you need to stay at those polling lines and rally immediately thereafter. You shouldn't just go back home and then watch the results on TV. You should make your presence known so that it's overwhelming. I'm sure that he has the numbers, but if this is any indicator, he's not going to have the numbers when the votes are counted. Because it doesn't matter who votes, it matters who's counting the votes. But if it's quite clear that 60-70% of the country is currently in the streets having voted for Milei, and you know, whether reluctantly or full-throatedly, there's not going to be a whole lot that they can do, and it would be much more difficult for them to pull off the 2020 repeat U.S. style. And I wish good for the people of Argentina, because Argentina is a pretty cool country. All you need to do is get rid of the socialism shit, and it'd be pretty much perfect. That, and you need to have a Second Amendment sort of thing going on. Hey, you know, Israel is going with it. Brazil stripped back some of its, problems. Sirlink. If Trump gets in, what can he do to strip the alphabet agencies immediately without Congress? They're the greatest threat to our republic, in my opinion. Yes, overburdensome bureaucracy is the greatest of all evils in the U.S. government. There's not a whole lot he can do immediately. He can, of course, veto budget deals and try to effectively defund these groups, but he's not going to get the will of the neocons in doing so. There are a few bureaus he has more power over. Some of them have more oversight from the executive, for example, than from the legislative branches. And of course, if the right people are in the legislative branch and the right committees, he could throttle some of the other agencies too. He's not going to be capable of going all in and immediately solving any problem whatsoever. I believe that 4 more years of Trump is a good thing. I will absolutely vote for him. He's got my total and unequivocal support. Disagreements over a few basic ideological principles aside, generally I support what he did in his first term, and I would be very excited to see a second, partially because it would be almost unprecedented. We've only had one other non-consecutive second termer in United States history. He's probably going to be running from the Mar-a-Lago under house arrest. It would be the greatest fuck you to the establishment, the biggest vote of no confidence in the system as it is that we can possibly make. It's probably our last chance without violence of reforming the system in any meaningful sense. And since I don't support political violence, I'll be voting for Trump. But he's not going to be perfect. And even if he had 40 years instead of just 4, even if he had the will of both chambers of Congress during that whole period, it would still not be perfect. Don't expect too much from him. Expect a good job, which I think that he'll do. Again, he's the best president since the first term of Ronald Reagan. In living memory for many of us, we hadn't seen a president that actually did a good job. But he's not going to be your 10 out of 10. He's not going to be the next Theodore Roosevelt or the next Thomas Jefferson. He's going to be much better than other contemporary examples. And in the end, they will dogpile him, Romanize him, and they'll do what they did to Roman emperors that did a good job and were well liked, but the intelligentsia didn't like them. And so until fairly recently, we always regarded them as tyrants. That is what they're going to do to Trump. By the way, Trump is well aware of this fact, I assure you. He knows he's not going to have a presidential library. Josh Polillo, sure is great that the adults are back in control. Yeah, the problem being that they're adults like, the modern equivalent of Gaddafi and people like that. Black Camo, any digging onto OMG Act Blue investigation? I haven't seen anything about it. If you've got any info, you can always DM me on Twitter. Necro Google, so thankful for all these wars for ending COVID. Has news reached the clankers of the ability to file suit? And I can't read the rest of that, unfortunately, because it's verboten on YouTube. It may be true, but I'm still forbidden to actually say it on this particular platform. To those of you on Rumble, you can see it as well. I can't even pin it on here without getting banned. Alan Smithy, go ahead. Take a spooky dookie. Sir Link, you heard Colorado keeping Trump off the ballot. I believe that will fall through. The several states are definitely trying to do so. It's not going to become a reality. Shadows and Dust 2, YouTube, General Wesley Clark, 7 countries, 5 years. Oh, the next news story, an interesting one, by the way. Mohammed Muzu, the Maldives' new president, wants India out. Yes, the Maldives is a series of coral islands off of the coast of India. It's a fairly long archipelago, I think it would be termed. I'm not sure if it counts as one, though, because basically most of them are, other than human development being piled on top, they would be below sea level other than the reef. So I don't know if all of them technically qualify as actual islands or whether they're more like, mankind built them up so they're 6 inches above sea level. I'm not exactly sure about the linguistics of that one. I'll have to check some more geographical texts, I suppose. Maldives is a small, mainly tourist-related country. Tourism and fishing, of course, down there in the Indian Ocean. And because they don't really have a military, they got a couple of helicopters, and that's basically it, and a handful of military police, again, scattered across a number of reef islands, they are reliant upon other countries for their livelihood. You can't help it. Large countries with more military power tend to sphere the smaller countries. It's always the way it's been. It's always the way it'll be. I'm sorry if you were born in a country without a significant functional military, but fundamentally, you're the pawn of another nation. The idea is that the other nation probably doesn't want to abuse you because, I mean, number one, it's expensive and there's no purpose. And number two, you still do have a military and they want access to it if there's a war potentially. This is why the EU formed. This is why NATO formed. There's the Eastern Bloc, former Warsaw Pact. China's got its alliances, etc. India has several other countries that, by and large, are under their sphere. They're a nuclear power, a lot of manpower, large population, huge economic output, and so they have a sphere. And the Maldives is part of it. I have a sneaking suspicion that the reason why India is getting kicked to the curb by the Maldives has to do with religion. That is specifically because the individual kicking them out is Islamic, and India is primarily a Hindu nation that has been suppressing certain minority Islamic groups for terrorism more than anything else. And so they're kicking them out. But that doesn't mean that the Maldives are going to become independent. It means they're going to have to suck the cock of Pakistan more likely than not, or possibly China. So you can choose. You kick the Hindus out. Now you can suck the cock of Islamofascists or state atheists, basically. And they're not going to align with the United States, I suppose. That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Who else is going to take you into this? Are you going to, be a pawn of Saudi Arabia? Well, they're part of the Western sphere by and large, so I don't think that that's going to happen. The Israelis, it'd be funny, all of a sudden Jewish colonizers show up in the Maldives. Like, oh yeah, we're getting kicked out of the Middle East because shit's going down there. We just want one of your reef islands. We can settle 50 people on it. We can, we can look for starfish. It's got a tropical climate. I'm sure it's really nice. I mean, it's basically a giant tourist resort, but you can't parse yourself out of the sphere, militarily or otherwise, of one major nation without having to suck up to another unless you have a fairly significant military and economic output. The Maldives is a series of reef islands with a tiny population that constantly complains about how climate change is going to drown them all. So that's definitely not going to happen. They'll quickly be in someone else's sphere, probably from the Islamic world, which seems to be the point, according to their new president. Ian, Maldives, across the Rubicon. I'm going to call it the Maldives because I'm American, and that's the way that an I is supposed to be pronounced, man. Early worm gets the bird. What the hell happened to chances of another Iran revolution? They beat and raped all of the people that were protesting them. Once they were successful in beating and raping all the protesters, the protests went away. It's just like magic. Again, I mean, at this point, things are so brutal in the world at some points. The only thing you can do is make humor, even when humor's not really appropriate. Alex Glanz, for that auspicious cap. Yes, this is the kitty that doesn't piss on belongings. Although I will point out something. She has definitely taken off where Yana left off in terms of the meowing department. It's just that instead of doing it at 4 a.m., she'll do it at like 7:30. Today, she waited until almost 8, which I was very thankful for. She will still wake the baby up. It's just that she's waking him up at a time that's, it's appropriate. You slept till 7:30, 8 o'clock. That's okay since, you went to bed hours before midnight. That's okay. And if I get woken up at 7 or 7:30, that's okay too. I can deal with that. Yana was more like 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And between that and pissing on the belongings and attacking her sister, and she was always the aggressor. Farah never attacked her sister. It just wasn't workable. Yeah, these guys really need to be in a one-cat household. And Yana's with a new family and apparently getting along well. They don't have any other pets and seemed to fall right in like within a single day. Was getting snuggled and everything like that. So clearly, I think that she was stressed as well by the situation. I think there was a tomcat in this house before, and that's what set her off. Wasted bonehead, Sticks, what do you mean Trump won't resurrect the country's economy like Frankenstein and drown us all in gold? Do you doubt the God Emperor? Yeah, see, that was the problem. Some people thought like that during the first term, and then when he was just a good president as opposed to being perfect by their standards, they became TDS sufferers. That's the only reason that DeSantis is still in the double digits right now. Barely, but, he's there. BW, think RFK will get enough black support to cost Dems? If Dems lose elections due to blacks, do you think they succeed in making Dems consider reparations? anything can and will happen. But again, I think that RFK Jr. is going to be more palatable among Democrats, so they would be Democrat voters that would have potentially voted for Trump at higher levels than normal. Maybe not at 2016 levels, but there would have been a differentiation. In the end, I don't think that it changes anything. If anything, Cornel West, I think, has a bigger impact on the election, honestly, specifically by catering to disaffected leftoids in certain states. Former Dems going awry will vote for Trump out of spite, says Josh X022. I agree. There will be former Democrats that vote for Trump because they hate their own party. But then again, keep in mind, there are Republicans that'll do the same and vote against Trump in favor of Biden. Or maybe not for Biden. I mean, they'd have to be really crazy to do that. But, I mean, they might vote for Mickey Mouse or something like that. Anyway, really quickly, we're up on 50 minutes, so I'm not going to go too much longer here. Because I got to settle in, do some dinner shit, and also get ready for tomorrow, live stream, main videos. Hillary endorsed candidate for Houston mayor, Sheila Jackson Lee, berates staff in profanity-laced tirade. I'm not going to go over this in any detail. Link in the description. You can go ahead and listen to that link for yourself, to Sheila Jackson Lee talking to one of her staffers, actually. The only reason I'm talking about it, like, it doesn't surprise me that behind closed doors she's a bitch. Doesn't surprise me in the least. I would have been surprised if she wasn't. We get the same thing with Klobuchar. Supposedly she throws shit at people's head. Hillary Clinton, there have been tales about her doing the same. Donald Trump supposedly gets pissed and throws ketchup bottles at the wall. And I actually believe that, by the way. I don't think that part's TDS. Oh, he threw things in anger? Yeah, I believe that about Donald Trump. Yes, I do. At least it wasn't plates like Hillary Clinton would do, something that can actually injure someone. So you throw in the Heinz packets around. That's pretty funny more than anything else. It's not surprising that Sheila Jackson Lee has a mouth when she's pissed, especially you are in a high stress job. You're a member of Congress. You do rely on your staff for an awful lot. I'm not even going to blame her for this. Believe it or not, I'm not going to dogpile Sheila Jackson Lee for this. The reason I wanted to talk about it is it reminded me so much of the Artie Lang era Howard Stern bits, you know, when he would have, like, Gary would fuck up or something like that. And while I don't necessarily listen to modern Howard Stern, post-overdose many years ago, I will say that anything that had whack packers in it was very funny back in the day. And one of the funniest things was, Stern. He had various staff, and a lot of them were incompetent. They didn't know what they were doing, or they knew what they were supposed to be doing, but they weren't doing it. And so they would have all of these insane fights, and Stern would berate them, and they'd get berated by one another. And it was always very funny. It's like, because Stern would do DJing and then like news stories and stuff like that, but there would also be all of this constant drama within the office with people who clearly were incompetent or not doing their job because of laziness. And this was the case with, well, pretty much everyone that was there. And it made for really good, especially when Stern TV was a thing. When Howard TV was still a thing, it was hilarious. I remember seeing that back when I was too young to technically be watching topless women. But I watched it anyway. I had a fun vacation that year. And it reminds me exactly the same. She's going off and saying the weirdest, most insulting shit. Like, I don't care if shit ass has the paper or if bullshit has the paper, get it to me. And just going off completely. And it sounds almost identical. Like if somebody take AI, at least one of you out there is talented enough to do this. Take the transcript of Sheila Jackson Lee and put it in Howard Stern's voice. And tell me that it doesn't sound like a bit from 2005 or something like. I would laugh my ass off. And the thing is, it couldn't even be copyrighted, of course. You should definitely do that. It'd be fucking hilarious. I mean, she's clearly, an angry individual. Although I can imagine you're a member of Congress. Maybe she was up for a vote, like, within a couple of hours or something, and they lost the paper. They don't know what date it was signed on or something. I can actually understand sort of, why you'd be pissed. She uses a lot of colorful language, though. So again, I mean, we found a Democrat, a far left Democrat, no less, going off, and I'm not actually going to dogpile her at all. I just found it hilarious. Some people are calling for firing, and it's like, do you think that other members of Congress don't act like that behind closed doors? Give me a goddamn break. Again, I am sure that Donald Trump had multiple profanity-laced tirades against staffers and people in his cabinet. I am certain of it. I don't need John Bolton to tell me that that's the case to know that it's true. I just don't believe in all the criminal behavior bullshit. But yeah, no, Donald Trump has a temper? No. Really? Oh, man. When I listened to that, I was just thinking about the whole thing in Howard Stern's voice. That was how close it was, actually. Somebody, please use AI. Please do that for me and DM me the link. Do it. Or if you do a good Stern impression or something like that, that's perfectly fine, too. Wasted Bonehead. Oh, I already read that one. Oh, there's a follow-up, though. Why does it tickle me to think of Madam... She will literally grab my hand like that. To think of Madam President throwing wine at people. Can we get a 32-bit video game about this concept? See how long you can avoid the cheap box wine. You should make a video game, like a low-budget one, like an old SNES-style game, where you are Hillary Clinton and box wine is one of your weapons. Maybe base it on Zombies Ate My Neighbors and have instead of zombies, there's like dudes in MAGA hats, like rednecks or something. Make it really over the top, like anti-populist, like a true leftoid made the game. So you get the MAGA hat zombies, and you've got QAnon shaman could be like those swamp creatures or something. You have QAnon shaman jumping around trying to get you. And instead of those like packs of soda, and you could toss them, they were really effective against those little demon dudes with the axes. I think they were like meant to be Chucky dolls or something. And they could only attack you if you were line of sight. Like if you're off to the side, they very slowly would toddle over. It was an interesting enemy. But they were really vulnerable against having like fizzy bottles thrown at them. But instead of fizzy bottles, make it box wine. That would be funny. Somebody make the Hillary Clinton MAGA Ate My Neighbors game. You could probably do that in a month flat, considering how old that game is. Good game, by the way. Fucking almost goddamn possible. That game, especially with the save codes, because they would only save at intervals and you'd lose all of your weapons when you actually use them, it made more sense to start from level 1 and just try to plow all the way through the game. So 5 hours later, finally you're kind of on the boss. Hoo boy. By the way, weed whackers work well against vampires. I learned that again in that game. Anyway, NBC is absolutely furious that the world is ignoring it and the rest of the MSM in favor of Twitter accounts by 14-1. That's a zero hedge posting. Yes, apparently research is showing what I talked about this morning, before I actually read this, by the way, which is that there's now a massive lopsided sort of difference between the primary so-called journalism, so the propaganda outlets, CNN, Fox, etc., and the amplification of the message that nonetheless is separate from the message, which is content creators. I have a proposition. I want all of you to pay close attention to what I'm about to say. If this is even remotely true, let's say that it's 1/10 of this, so it's really almost 1-to-1. It's like a 50-50. We can crush the legacy media's ever-loving goddamn shit out of it by doing exactly one thing. Archive the news articles. Use archive.today, archive.org, whatever you have to use before you link it out anywhere. Before you share it on Facebook, before you share it on Twitter, certainly before you front it to a content creator. Clankers have been very industrious in generally archiving all the links before they send me news articles. I'm very thankful about that because it's at least one less click that they get even if I don't cover the article. I've probably denied them through my own efforts because I archive my own shit as well. Millions and millions and millions of views. I mean, that boils down to a significant amount of money considering the impact one single creator can have. Between your collective efforts, sending me and others things, archiving it, it's probably, again, a significant amount of money, many millions or tens of millions of views. If we could just get 1/10 of all of the major content creators to do the same thing, take a little extra time out of their schedule to popularize and utilize archiving sites. If this differential is even close to true, hell, even if it's not particularly close to true and it's 50-50, can you imagine how much money they'll lose? They're really going to need to suck off a lot more investors. Then they'll have to show their ass even more, be even more biased, and they'll get even less revenue. that go into a death spiral. We'll have effectively knocked them out of the air with clanker, anti-air systems. It'll be a thing of beauty. I think that it's a great idea. So let's crush them. Always use archive.today or some similar service. There are others. That one's the one I prefer. It works better with most websites. Although Fox, I've noticed it really lags a lot. Archive.org works better for Fox News. I'm thinking that some of the sites don't work with Archive at all anymore. They've screwed with their code or something. Somebody needs to tinker with the Archive sites and make sure they can get around every form of paywall as well. But in general, the concept is working. I can't even imagine. I mean, how many billions potentially of dollars have already been lost on clickbait alone over the last decade because of archival sites, even when there's no concerted effort to archive things for any particular socio-political purpose? Probably a lot of them. So keep using it. And then also, brief update, the baby is starting to cry and we're going up on an hour, so I'm going to cut it short here. Venezuelans top Mexicans in U.S. illegal border crossings for first time on record in September. I would just like to say that in some of these cases, these people are actually legit refugees because they're fleeing from fucking communism. In other cases, they're not, but it's difficult to tell who's who. To those of you Venezuelans that are genuinely fleeing far leftism, just don't fall back into your old voting habits. Make sure to vote straight libertarian and populist and be a better world. Got a few more super chats. Please send no more super chats. I've got a few to go through here. Dat Pie over there. You keep saying to move Israel to Long Island. We're already trying to hold off a tyrannical state. The last thing we need is a democratic dictatorship plopped on us. Well, I mean, you've already got one if you're in New York, so it wouldn't really matter. It's a joke about Long Island demographics. It's not a serious suggestion. Early Worm gets the bird. Watch Ninth Gate for the 100th time. Any must-watch occult movie? Brotherhood of the Wolf. That would be one. I'd watch Human Centipede Part 2. I don't understand why people have a problem with that movie. It's definitely grueling. It's kind of mindless. It's what people wanted with the first movie. They crucified both of them. Nat H, what do you see the end goal being for Iran? It's harder to tell. They've been a little bit more mixed message over the last couple of years than they were before. Much more direct prior. I'm not exactly sure. All right, Demioyo. If America is the best country in the world, why does it have one of the highest suicide rates in the world and among the lowest life expectancies in the first world? Well, the latter, lack of good diet and exercise, a lot of corn syrup binders and soy bullshit. That'd be number one. As far as one of the highest suicide rates in the world, a lot of the United States is pretty dark and cold, but it doesn't have necessarily the same mental health care that other dark, cold countries like the Norwegians and the Swedes and stuff happen to have. So that's probably why. We do have a mental health crisis. I've got a different way to solve it from the mainstream. Shadows and Dust 2, standing outside a broken telephone booth. Lol. There's still a telephone booth where you are? I haven't seen one of those in years. They seem to have gone out of existence. It was always fun crank calling the cops from the telephone booth. Did that once when I was 4, and then the cops showed up. I didn't realize that they could locate which telephone booth I was doing that from. Whoops, I almost got away with it. I stayed around a little bit too long. But yeah, we will go offline now. I will be live again tomorrow. I thank you to the nearly 5,000 people that tuned in live. And yeah, we'll talk about more about the Venezuelans maybe tomorrow. I went a little bit over today. I'm sure some people like, some people dislike. Hopefully, I mean, I'm hoping for there not being any major diplomatic news because I'm expecting at any time I'm going to wake up and World War III has begun. So I'm almost hoping for a fucking boring live stream over anything else. I'd much rather talk about food. I'd rather talk about MREs or mushrooms or cats or something like that. I have to keep talking about people fucking killing each other. I'm like, you people, I don't know if you're Homo sapiens. You're not acting like it. Homo erectus or something like that. Homo habilis. I think beyond Homo neanderthalensis as well, actually. I don't know exactly what hominid is involved with making the diplomatic decisions from the United States at this point, but it's definitely a lesser evolved one. That's about all. Peace out.